down. Is this a lack of education and a lack of interest in our nation's past? I'm speaking as a whole because I know you are engaged. You wouldn't have made Road to Serfdom a #1 bestseller if you weren't interested in history. Many Americans are. But the media can just bash Sarah Palin. The public can bash Sarah Palin for her remarks on Paul Revere, and nobody says anything because nobody knows the truth. A couple of weeks ago, they called Sarah Palin stupid and every other name in the book. It's not new to the Palins. They're used to it, I'm guessing, by this point. But historians were immediately asked about this. Yes, believe it or not, this is the story, and one of the only stories the press ruthlessly investigates. Sarah Palin. Well, they pointed out, the historians did, a 1798 letter written by Paul Revere, where he describes how after his capture by the British officers, he warned that there would be 500 Americans there in a short time, for, quote, I had alarmed the country all the way up. That's what Sarah Palin said he did. Several Boston historians said, you know what, Palin's correct. One Boston University historian, Brendan McConville, listen to this, said, basically, when Paul Revere was stopped by the British, he did say, look, there's a mobilization going on that you're going to be confronting. And the British are aware as they're marching down the countryside, they hear church bells ringing. She was right about that, and firing warning shots. That's accurate, end quote. But wait, there's more to this story. Despite the historic evidence on her side, he added that he wasn't convinced that Palin remarks reflected scholarship. Quote, I'd call her lucky in her comments. Really? What a lucky stab in the dark, huh? Others weren't quite as kind. One historian, even with the matching letter and Sarah Palin's comments, then went on to not only discredit her, but also said he wasn't sure that Paul Revere was telling the truth. So the historians put you in a position to where they're saying, for political reasons, no, you can't listen to even the guy who wrote the letter, the guy who the story is about, Paul Revere. You got to listen to us. We know better. They're so desperate to mock and trash for political purposes that they are willing to distort and ignore political facts for political gain, or historic facts for political gain. They also bashed her when she told a Tea Party crowd, party like it's 1773. The media, of course, thought she was referring to the Declaration of Independence, which, of course, was signed in 1776. And it has become an accepted Palin gaffe. But if people knew their history, they would have turned on the media a lot earlier. They would know that she was referring to the Boston Tea Party, talking to a Tea Party, telling them to party like 1773, which is the year the Boston Tea Party happened. The same thing happened when we, this program, talked about the 3/5 clause in the Constitution, and when Michelle Bachmann was assailed for saying that our forebears fought against slavery. We're no longer teaching the truth in America, and the truth is so clear. You want the 3/5 clause? Go back and read Frederick Douglass. Go back and read his own words. He makes such a clear case for it. He ends in one of my favorite phrases. Something, I'm paraphrasing, something along the lines of, so stop with the 3/5 clause. What are our children learning? They don't know about history. They don't know about America. But they do know about Che. Well, they know about a kinder, gentler side of Che. They buy the T-shirts to show solidarity with a glorious communist revolutionary. What they're not taught about Che might make them rethink the T-shirt. But then again, I don't know how many of us are even thinking anymore. Che hated America and generally was a pretty evil dude. In fact, he wanted to destroy America. Quote, if the rockets had remained, we would have used them all and directed them against the very heart of the U.S., including New York, in our defense against aggression. But we haven't got them, so we shall fight with what we've got. Every battle action is a battle cry against imperialism and for the battle hymn for the people's unity against the great enemy of mankind, the United States of America. Does it sound familiar? It's Che, but it could be a lot of revolutionaries that are currently working in and around our government. Che was also a racist. Does anybody wearing a t-shirt or carrying a Che purse know that? On the African American, quote, "The Negro is indolent and a dreamer, spending his meager wage on frivolity and drink. The European has a tradition of work and saving." He was a murderer. Quote, "To send men to the firing squad, judicial proof is unnecessary. These procedures are archaic bourgeois detail. This is revolution. And a revolutionary must become a cold killing machine motivated by pure hate." End quote. How do you feel about your t-shirt when you hear this one? Love of being a murderer. Quote, "I feel my nostrils dilate, savoring the acrid smell of gunpowder and blood." Che was personally responsible for overseeing at least 163 executions. More than 100 of these were just political prisoners deemed to be traitors. Our society has glorified him. And somehow or another, our founders and our Constitution have become irrelevant or somehow or another evil. If an animal like Che can over time have his history twisted to the point where he is an international icon and our Constitution can be made irrelevant and oppressive, we stand no chance of survival. But there is good news. America is waking up. Sanity isn't completely dead. We told you about a story out of Arizona, and the top education official said yesterday that the ethnic studies program, you remember, the one we told you about that called for the overthrow of the United States government and had these students chanting for it because they were all revved up by former hippie revolutionaries. The superintendent said that course violated a new state law that if they don't cut the class, they risk losing 10% of their funding, about $15 million. The media describes this new law as controversial. Well, I want to tell you how controversial this is. Brace yourself. Here it is. This new controversial law, as described by the press, bans K-12 programs that, quote, promote the overthrow of the U.S. government. How controversial. Promote resentment towards a race or a class of people. How controversial. Or are designed primarily for pupils of one ethnic group or advocate ethnic solidarity. How controversial. I always thought white power would be bad. What's the difference if you just change the color? It's not controversial. We are being led astray intentionally. About a week ago, I asked you, and I told you, what do we have? 11 shows remaining. We have 11 shows remaining, 10 after tonight on this network. We have tried to do history. I think there are many, I know, on our crew, including me, and many in our audience that have learned things on this program, in particular about African American history, that nobody has ever, none of us knew. None of us knew. We asked you a few days ago, in our last 11 shows, if we did a show on history, what would you want?